Hi, everybody. So Graça was just painting for us a beautiful tale of the future. And as she said, the future is here. We are building the future. So we really have to get ready. And yes, I am Katy Rubin. I'm a legislative theater practitioner and designer. And in the legislative theater, everyone is an actor. Every citizen is an actor because we take action in the world. And so in order to get ready, we're actually going to have to warm up. So can we have a little bit of lights up on the public here? There you go. So you can put down your phones for a second. There you go. Put down your notebooks. And if you can, just lift up your right hand or one hand, wherever you are. Great. Oh, you look great. Okay, great. And make a circle with that hand in the air. There you go. Beautiful. Excellent. Everyone's fabulous. Okay.
Big as you can.
Yeah, big as you can. Stretch that out. Wake up after lunch and keep that going. And lift up your other hand. And now you're going to make a plus sign with the other hand at the same time. Yes, there you go. Excellent. You're doing great. Oh, they're fabulous. Now don't stop the plus sign. And with your first hand, write creative bureaucracy in the air. All right? There you go. Give it a go. Don't give up. Don't give up. Come on. It's okay. We can fail. Yes. Excellent, 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 excellent. Anybody feeling a little bit upside down after that? Yeah, a little bit turned up over and a little bit discombobulated. And we want to say maybe that's what we're going to have to do in our future. To break some patterns and create something new is get ready to be upside down. And did anyone have a bit of a laugh?
Yeah.
Yes. Great. So maybe that future is also going to be, or must also be, really, really fun.
So we're starting this way for a deadly serious reason, and we called our session, which has just disappeared, The Joy of Citizening, How to Open Up Our Institutions Before They Die. And we're bringing together the joy and the fun of this with the deadly serious challenge that our institutions are in serious trouble, right? I'm Jon Alexander, author of a book called Citizens. There's 2 copies left at the bookshop outside, which I'm feeling very smug about, so get to them afterwards. But my part of this is I'm going to share with you 2 frameworks to offer as a way of understanding the moment in time we're living in and what the extent of this challenge is. The first of them is this. This is the set of ideas that sits at the heart of all of my work. I think of it as 3 stories of self and society that we are kind of caught in a battle over right now. The easiest way to introduce them very quickly is as a sort of historical shift. End of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th, we were something like subjects. The right thing to do in the subject story is you keep your head down, you do as you're told, you get what you're given, and the God-given few who know best are in charge, and they lead us to the best outcomes. In the subject story, we're dependent. We have stuff done to us. We obey and receive, and organizations and leaders command us. Now, that story fell apart end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th, and out of the 2 world wars, we more or less deliberately, more or less consciously constructed what I call the consumer story. In the consumer story, the right thing to do is to pursue self-interest on the basis that self-interest will add up to the collective interest. That is how the best outcomes will result. In the consumer story, people are independent. They have stuff done for them. They demand and choose, and organizations and leaders serve them. And my argument is that what's happening right now, what we're living in right now, is the collapse of that story, just as the subject story fell apart before. Because you cannot solve the challenges of our time from within that story, because it created them. You can't solve challenges of loneliness and mental ill health from within a story that says we're independent, isolated individuals. You can't solve crises of inequality from within a story that proposes competition as the strategy for everything. And you can't solve ecological crises from within a story that says we're separate from nature and that success is all about the accumulation of material standards of living. You cannot solve the crises from within the story because the story created them, and we are trapped within that story. The great challenge of our time, I think, is that too many of the people in positions of power and influence in our societies can only see those 2, and therefore they think that their role is to protect and defend what we have in the consumer story, to keep doing things for people, while the subject story starts to raise its ugly head, while authoritarianism and fascism returns, and offers a promise of certainty in these times of uncertainty and chaos when the promises are no longer being fulfilled. But what I'm proposing and what's in all of our work and what Grasser has just described so poetically and beautifully is that there is another story, there is another idea of who we are that is actually much deeper, much truer of humanity and is popping up everywhere. And that's what I call the citizen story. In the citizen story, it's not just about keep your head down, do as you're told. It's not just about pursue self-interest. It's about get involved, contribute your ideas, energy, and resources to the pursuit of the best outcomes for society as a whole. And critically, that we have to reimagine and reinvent our institutions to tap into that collective energy, that collective wisdom, that collective resource. In the citizen story, we're interdependent. We do stuff together with and through organizations. We participate and create, and organizations and leaders facilitate. This came out into the world in 2022 in my book, and it's been spreading and people talking about it, but it hasn't fully taken hold, right? Even in Portugal with Grasser, the world's first national-scale participatory budget, huge success, but when Grasser was moved ministries, it stopped. Why can we not break this? What's keeping us stuck? The second model I want to propose to you is this. I'm going to introduce it very briefly. This actually comes from the realm of relationship therapy. And so you might want to think about a friendship that went wrong or a relationship or something. But the argument here, no one is to blame, but everyone is guilty in this model, right? And what happens is that in destructive relationship patterns, we end up in situations where someone becomes a perpetrator. Someone is overstepping their agency in a space. Someone becomes a victim, owns their own powerlessness and shrinks in. And someone, or many people, are dragged in as rescuers to act for them. You might be able to think through and recognize that in some destructive pattern that all of us have experienced this in some shape or form. But I think this is what's happening on macro scale in our politics. I think we're in a situation, and as I say, this is not about blaming any pole of this, but we're in a situation where our politicians have too often become perpetrators. Where institutions, media institutions, journalists, civic institutions, our government institutions, our charities and NGOs as campaigning organizations have become rescuers, doing it for people. And voters, citizens have been reduced only to voters choosing between their perpetrators, pushing their power out rather than owning it. And as a result, where we end up is that too much of our politics happens on the line of that top and isn't really involving people. And the key point here is that this is a pattern. Right? These are gravitational pulls that in some way satisfy and draw us into them and keep us trapped in them. But the really interesting thing from the work on this, what's called the drama triangle, first proposed by Cartman in about 1968, is that there are ways out. And the ways to break these patterns at each pole, and anyone can be, just as no one is to blame, any part of this pole can be the start of the solution. Those in the victim space claim their agency and become creators. Those in the rescuer space build the self-reliance of victims rather than stepping in and doing it themselves and become supporters. And perpetrators cede control and actually give themselves a break in the process and become enablers. And this, I think, gives us the sort of pattern that we are trying, I think this conference is actually all about. But we need to acknowledge these patterns that we get drawn back into and stuck in if we're really going to do this. But what this conference and what all of this work is really all about is flipping that triangle, turning us upside down, so that creative citizens are on top, enabling government and supporting organizations are coming together behind that. And it's possible, right? We have the tools.
We have the tools. We have the tools at our fingertips. We've been talking about all of them. Legislative theater is just one of those ways to flip the triangle. When institutions do open up, when institutions trust citizens, and citizens come up and say, we have change we're ready to make. So how does legislative theater work? There's 4 steps. We say watch, act, propose, vote. First, community members who are facing some kind of policy challenge, design challenge, any kind of public issue or problem come together to play games like we've been doing, tell stories, build solidarity, and create a play that reflects the human lived experience of that challenge as a way to frame the policy question from the citizens first. So they create that play, and then they invite in community members, peers, neighbors, policymakers, activists, advocates, all those folks in the triangle, to watch the play, analyze, and talk about the problems. But that's not it. We don't just stay as spectators watching, passive. We become spect-actors, as you all are now, as you've warmed up. And spect-actors enter the scene to test out new alternatives, actually improvising policy changes in the room, in real time, with the community members who are facing these problems, to negotiate, iterate, see what will work, come together around both a shared understanding of the problem and a shared experience of problem solving. And once we've tested and improvised and laughed and had fun, we are able to propose. We draft policy proposals together. So we go from all being actors to all being policymakers. Everybody is a policymaker, drafting, writing policies, thinking about what they want to see out of everything we've tested to happen in the real world. And then those policymakers who are part of the process, they're also taking action, having fun, having to get busy. Next slide. Like that, right? Being put on the spot to help us negotiate and develop those ideas until we have a slate of proposals, a vision for our future that is specific and nuanced and grounded in real life, and we can vote. Voting as a joyous and collective action that is not
There's a blank screen.
There's voting as a blank screen. Imagine a lot of happy people voting with green and red cards, and that we say that voting is not just an end or a beginning of a process. Once we've done all that work and we've voted, we're ready then to continue implementing, working together, developing those ideas so that those community members stay involved throughout the life of the policy proposals. And lots of concrete changes and long-term changes in participation have happened through legislative theater. So this is one way to flip the triangle, where citizens become creators and policymakers become enablers, and those supporting organizations are not rescuing, but they're actually supporting, cheerleading. They're part of that process. But, you know, when we talk to therapists, they talk about those patterns. They keep coming back. They keep trying to push back in because they're deeply ingrained. It's going to take us a long time. This is a cyclical work. And so I'm going to tell you a quick story about one time when we were in such a great place with the legislative theater process, and that policy triangle flipped right back around. And those patterns of victim and perpetrator came out and tried to crush that joyful participatory process. And yet, the structures of our joyful and participatory processes held us together and brought us back into action, into progress. So, in the images you've just seen some of them, imagine we're in Glasgow. A few years ago, Glasgow City Council, working with young people and disabled Glaswegians to green their urban policies, urban planning, transport policies. They just warmed up the audience. They'd seen this play about accessibility, transport, open spaces, accessibility of citizen participation, and everyone's really jazzed. And then we get to the part where we invite the audience to come and be spectators, to test out their policy and structural ideas. And somebody raised their hand. And I don't know if this woman who worked at the council, if she was having a bad day, but probably she was having a series of bad days of being stuck in that triangle that maybe many of us can recognize, of being stuck in the role of perpetrator or victim or rescuer. And she said, I want to come up on stage. And she came up on stage with one young person, and she started to yell at him. She said, why are you complaining? You never show up at our consultations anyways. What is this about? You should just show up. I don't want to hear this anymore. And everybody was frozen. And the young people were off stage thinking, why are we doing this? Why are we continuing with this? And the audience was silent, seeing one of their peers exposing this triangle in neon lights. And I'm over there thinking, oh my God, this is it. Democratic participation is a lie. It's never going to work. And actually, what are we doing here? But we all saw this happen. And this structure of creativity and imagination and play that had already been implemented, laughing at the play, laughing in the warm-up, being in dialogue next to people who you don't usually work with, changing around those roles. It was there. And so somebody else in the audience said, no, my imagination is activated. My creativity is activated. I'm going to come up on stage and do something different. Another council staff, and he started to play and laugh and kind of slightly, gently make fun of those communication breakdowns between council and young people, made some jokes about the bees. Everyone was laughing, everyone was in the moment, and we were back to the shared understanding and the shared experience of problem solving. We'd taken a shared risk, and we'd gotten through from something that was possibly really, really awful to something that was even better. And the proposals and policies and actions that came out of that process were not just about transport or green spaces, but really about transparency and ongoing communication and involvement with all sectors and stakeholders in the city. So, how do we get those risks to happen? Jon and I think there might be a magic ingredient. And we said before, we're really serious about fun. I'm so serious about fun. Not light fun, not making light of things, not just having fun for the sake of it. Fun because it's essential to moving forward in this difficult time. And I think there's 3 reasons why fun is essential for participatory democracy. The first is that it opens up our imaginations to the new kinds of ideas we need for these entrenched problems, right? It allows us to think upside down when we're being playful, when we're laughing. Okay, it opens up our imaginations. But 2, it makes participatory democracy, it makes citizenship irresistible. Earlier today, Omazine talked about radical participation. And I want to see irresistible radical participation. That I can't resist but join in, and I want to come back next time. But most importantly, fun overturns, breaks apart, blows up these harmful patterns. Serious policymaking that happens with dark suits and quiet spaces and lots of rules, it does not allow us to turn things upside down. It supports existing power structures. How can we use fun to blow up those power dynamics and transform the drama cycle?
So if you want to go deeper into this with us, we're actually hosting another session a couple of hours tomorrow morning. If you're still in town, QR code, you can sign up and come and join us. But just to underline before we close, and Katy's going to round us out, which will excite you, I'm sure. Legislative theatre is one very powerful way to do this work of breaking patterns, but it is not the only way. Katy is not the only practitioner of legislative theatre. It's taking place all over the world. But there are also other things. There are stories we could have told of this pattern really being created. Taiwanese government crowdsourcing its national COVID response with the 3 design principles, fast, fair, and fun. Actually happened. Mexico City crowdsourcing its constitution through a massive creative process. In New York City, the participatory budget there, they have an artist in resident who animates the annual participatory budget with creative campaigns that are rooted in his philosophy, a little guy called Yasmani Arboleda, who has the wonderful line, "Democracy should be sticky and sweet like honey." This is the work, right? It's the work of breaking patterns. But it is important, back to the concepts of therapy, to understand the patterns that are trying to re-emerge and the patterns that we have to break. Because these show up. The victim pattern shows up in us lacking belief in our fellow citizens. Omazine, again, this morning was talking about how she was brought up to believe that this is what the people of Tunisia deserve. Dictatorship was what they deserved. That is a victim mindset. But it's also when we just think that people can only be self-interested, they don't want to participate. That's the victim pattern. The perpetrator pattern shows up when politicians feel under pressure to be the solution. I once read a statement in the Mayor of London strategy that said the mayor will plant 300,000 trees. I was like, no, he won't. And the rescuer pattern that is so tempting to step into for so many of us, right? We have to resist these patterns if we're actually, and we're going to flip them on their heads if we're actually going to be able to create this work that we are all part of. Round us out, my friend.
All right, because we're all part of it, we know that we can't just do it alone. This is not an individual exercise. This is a collective exercise. It's going to need all of us. And we're so serious about fun that we don't just warm up at the beginning. We also warm up at the end. So can we have the lights up again? Yes, I know. I'm making you do it. All right. So we're going to demonstrate. Thank you, Graça. So 1 second, you can watch us. So 2 people are going to shake hands. AC, I was going to ask you too. I see you out there. You can come out. Yeah, with you. Okay, and then we can't let go of that handshake until we each find somebody else's hand to shake. Go ahead, there you go, yeah. And then we can let go, and then we need to find somebody else's hand to shake, and so on. There you go, everybody do it now. Go. Shake. Yes, go. Go, keep going.
You can let go of that one. Ina.
Go. Find somebody else. Yes, find somebody else. You gotta find somebody else.
Find somebody else.
Go find somebody else. Yes.
Go around the room. Move, my friends.